I'm always ready. You never know when there's going to be a quarantine. So here we are.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly show of Classroom Without Walls, episode 120. On this show, I interview leading business professionals, social media marketers, entrepreneurs, business owners. They come here and share with us their best practices and strategies so that we can future-proof our businesses. And today we are talking about change and return on courage. And join me live is my guest of honor, Ryan Berman. And for those of you who don't know who is Ryan, Ryan, do you have a copy of your book, Ryan?
Ryan of course. Hold on.
Yeah, so Ryan is the author of the book that we will be talking about, titled Return on Courage, a business playbook for courageous change. So we'll be talking about courage and change, and you are going to walk away from today's interview with a new understanding of courage. I promise you. And you will also be able to understand how to become more courageous. And Ryan has a really amazing framework that he's going to discuss with us to teach you how you can become more courageous. And Ryan is also the founder of the company Courageous, along with a few other companies. I lost track of how many companies you have. Ryan is also a speaker, and he has worked with quite a few well-known brands, such as Subway, and Caesars Entertainment, Major League Baseball, and quite a few different brands and household names. So really honored to have you on the show, Ryan, and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. How you holding up? Doing okay over there?
I'm doing pretty good because I know I do everything online. So like my life hasn't changed that much. Yeah. By the way, we are live on LinkedIn. We are live on Facebook, on Periscope, and on YouTube. So if you are live with us right now, Wednesday, some of you, it is Thursday. So let me know in the comment section where you are joining us live from, social media-wise and geographically speaking. And my dear friend Peter, as always, based in the UK, an amazing marketer himself, is monitoring everyone's comments and questions. If you have any question, feel free to tag Peter. So let's get started. Are you ready, Ron?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So you have a book on courage. So share with us, what's the story behind you writing this book on courage?
Yeah, so I started my book writing journey in 2015. And back then, the idea, honestly, was I had landed on this concept of courage brands, and I love what it sounded like, but I had no idea what it meant. Mm-hmm. So I did what many entrepreneurs do. Hi, Stephanie Lou. Which was I bought the URL. I trademarked it.
I love that.
I was like, okay,
like a marketer. Yes.
Yeah, it's in me. And I was like, well, what is courage? Like, what does a courage brand actually mean? And I don't think I didn't feel like I could properly define a courage brand without deconstructing courage and really understanding this word. Now, if you look at the dictionary definition of courage, this is what really sent me down the rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
It is the ability to do something that frightens one. Mm-hmm. Now, do you want to do that?
No.
No, I don't want to do it either. Like, nobody wants to do things that are frightening. It's like, please step forward. I'm taking a step back. Mm-hmm. So my first 6 months writing this book was really just listening and seeing if I could come up with a better definition of courage that could help us almost take the courage out of courage and recognize when we needed it to make a move, how to do it with clarity versus how to do something that's careless or reckless.
Yeah.
So I want me to share that. Here's where I landed. And again, this was the book writing journey for me. It was about 1,000 days of listening. And I call the interview process the 3 Bs: the brave, the bullish, and the brainiac.
I love that.
You throw all that in the soup and you come out the other side with a clear definition of courage. So my definition of courage, it's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage. And it has to be all three.
Yeah, I love that. But before we dive into that, because I think that's such a core part of this book, and I love that concept really, really well. And by the way, Stephanie asked you, here's the question. How many domains have you purchased?
Stephanie, come on. Stephanie knows me very well. If this is a lifetime question, I think I probably have 50 domain names that I've acquired over the time, maybe 100, somewhere between 50 and 100.
That's awesome. Do you have classroomwithoutwalls.com? I would love to purchase from you.
I don't have that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, right. That's but that's funny.
I do have couragebootcamp.com. I've got trainthewilling.com, which I haven't done anything with yet. I have courageous.io that I haven't done anything with yet. So I'm having fun. I love it.
I love it.
Businesses.
I love it. I love it. So in your book, before we dive into the definition of how you have defined courage, knowledge, faith, and action. So before we dive into that, in your book, you actually cited quite a few shocking numbers. And as I was promoting the show, I shared some of the numbers on LinkedIn, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." So I just want to share a few numbers with the live audience right now. So for example, you mentioned 52% of the Fortune 500 companies since 2000 are now game over, extinct. And 80% of all startup companies will actually fail in the first 18 months. And another one you mentioned in your book, the former CEO of Cisco actually predicted 40% of companies will be dead in a decade. When I was reading those numbers, I was like, oh my God. So what is happening interpreting this for us?
Yeah. And if you're thinking what percentage of this are mergers, I think that's also a fair question, because a lot of them are mergers and acquisitions. But you got to understand that a merger, and these are not my words, it's just someone else's, it's more like a takeover. So one culture takes over the other culture, and you have a group of people that suddenly don't want to be there anymore. And then all that institutional knowledge starts walking out the door. And we have this attrition issue that slows a company down. And then because that knowledge walked out the door, we got to figure out things on our own. And you see the slowdown. Meanwhile, new companies that are playing off of newly created processes that are more modern start to pass us. Now, I also in the research saw that I believe there's going to be 9,000 brands that rattle on and off the Fortune 500.
I read that too.
Over the next 6 decades. And it used to be that once you're a part of the Fortune 500, 50 years ago, if you were on the Fortune 500 list, you were safe for about 75 years. And today it's about 12. So we have this literal grave danger. It's literally a grave danger that can end us in the business morgue or cemetery if we don't figure out a way how to reinvent ourselves. And to me, that's the issue. The issue is the difference between invention and reinvention.
I love this, like someone like myself, who have completely reinvented my identity, from a teacher to where I am today. I love this. I think, reinvention and just constantly reinvent what we do, who we are, should be part of our DNA. I love it. Yeah.
And think about how hard it was just for you by yourself.
Oh, yes.
So, right. Because the same thing for me. I mean, I feel like I've had to reinvent myself over the last, 3 years as well. And at first it wasn't easy. It's still not easy, but I could tell you, going through it and continuing to follow that path and reinventing and following where I think this is going, even though it's been hard. So imagine, by the way, if you're at a 300-person company, 1,000-person company with multiple offices, these are multiple organisms that are trying to figure out a way to stay in the relevance conversation.
Totally. I mean, in your book, it's so amazing to see that, how patient you are. You actually spend 3 years, interviewing all those most courageous people on planet Earth. And so share with us, like, who are the people interviewed, how many people interviewed, and this is the big question that we all want to know, which is, what do they share in common?
Yeah, what a good question. First of all, what a luxury it was to just be able to get quiet and to be a fly on the wall from some of these amazing people. And you can't have a conversation about courage without talking about fear. And when I think about what I was afraid of at first, you're sitting with the CEO and co-founder of Method Soap, or the president of Domino's, or an astronaut, or a Navy SEAL, tornado chasers, and like, how do they do what they do? And the number one thing that most of them have in common is clarity and purpose. They wouldn't say that they share with each other, but they have some version of clarity of what their purpose is as to why they're doing what they're doing. They may not have all of the answers, and they're at peace with that. When a Navy SEAL goes and sees live bullets, or a tornado chaser goes into a storm, they have as much knowledge as they've collected over their time seeing these things, which makes it a tint easier. Doesn't mean it's easy, because you just never know how this thing's going to operate in the middle. But there's a shared purpose for what they hope to accomplish from that particular mission. And CEOs, same thing. Like, some of them didn't know how if they would be able to ride the wave of relevance and stay in the wave of relevance, which is why they've surrounded themselves with really talented people to help them get to that next level.
I love it. So like, it seems like that purpose is like really coming from, I wish my friend Pam Roy is here right now, because she and I would talk so much about purpose, like for our children. I mainly work in the education space. It is so important for them to have that sense of purpose. So explain clarity a little bit. Is it the clarity on the business, like in 5 years, in 10 years? Is that what you mean by clarity?
Yeah, I think there's a number of different metrics you could put through the clarity filter. Hey, Mike Alton, what's up, buddy? The first one I would say is, how about clarity on yourself?
I love it.
So for me, 20 years in the service business, maybe surrendering myself 1% a year at a time, taking a phone call I shouldn't, or adhering to a request of a CEO, even though in my core I felt it was the wrong move. And this journey for me wasn't just about writing the book. It was a bit of a rite of passage to help me find myself. Right. And that started with turning the lens on myself, treating myself like a brand, and understanding my own personal core values. And I can tell you, after this long slog, I'm pretty clear on who I am, why I'm wired this way. One of my favorite interviews in the whole book writing journey was with a woman named Loretta Hidalgo, who was a founding astronaut at Virgin Galactic. And her definition of success is when there's no daylight between the personal you and the professional you.
Wow, I love this.
Imagine that. By the way, that had me driving home in silence from Orange County with my hands on like the 10 and 2 position. And I promised myself from that point forward that I would figure out who I was, why I was wired the way I was wired, and not sacrifice myself, surrender myself. So like, even my own personal core values, I can rattle them off pretty quickly. Playfulness is my number one. I take my work seriously, but I don't take myself that seriously. Creativity is my number 2. It's my superpower. I think most business people don't really understand the power of creativity to the bottom line. And I think, unfortunately, most creatives don't understand what they can do for businesses. 3 is courage. I think it's a little presumptuous to be like, I'm courageous, but I like to surround myself with people that want to stretch, that want to push. And then 4, I don't know why I'm wired this way, but I want to be great. So excellence is my number 4. I want to work with people that want to be great. I want to be a good example for my kids. So these are my decision-making filters for anything that I roll into. It always goes through those 4. And by the way, if somebody wants to run this exercise for themselves, email me at ryanberman@couragebrands.com, and I will send you the values assessment. again, I just find it fascinating that we spend so much time on other people's businesses and brands and not enough time on understanding ourself. Because once you understand who you are, you're going to be more valuable to that company because you can, again, if you don't know what you stand for, you never know when to take a stand.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, you're like music to my ears, like so true. And when I was working on my full-time job, it was just a job. There was such a mismatch between what I do and who I am. Like, no wonder I was miserable. And when I look at many others who are still doing like if it is a job they don't really enjoy, they don't really feel like being fulfilled from inside out. And now I do what I do, everything's kind of really well blended in. So I love this feeling like a lot. So I so agree. I love how you talk about purpose. So here's this question from Peter. So I think everyone is resonating on what you mentioned earlier, your personal life and your professional life. You just become one, a beautiful integration, right? Not work-life balance, but everything has become well integrated. So are you different in your personal life or as you are professionally, or everything has become one?
I would ask Stephanie Liu if she's still listening because she could vouch. But look, someone once said to me, it takes you 40 years to figure out who you are and the next 40 to be that person.
Oh.
And, it doesn't, by the way, that doesn't mean that's going to work for everybody. But for me, it did. It took me 40 years to really figure out why I'm wired the way I'm wired, what lights me up. And to just go back to your thought on your job. And I don't want to like make anybody feel bad about themselves, but just, I think it's important to ask the question, like, do you have a job, a career, or a calling? And where are you on that particular spectrum? And it doesn't mean that you need to have a calling. Everyone needs to have a calling. Maybe your job provides for you in a way that it allows you to go live life, outside of work and doing things that really light you up. For me, with my time, I love the idea that I get to really nudge or challenge those who aspire, like who want it, to deal with change. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you can have a conversation about change without having a conversation about courage. It takes courage to change our leadership styles. It takes courage to reinvent a culture. It takes courage to move away from something that was once working, where deep down inside, it's not working at the same level that it used to work. Mm-hmm. It takes courage to put a plan in place to reinvent yourself, even though as you started, there's no path to tell you that it's going to be successful. And really that paralysis, the difference between paralysis and action is the clarity. It's the knowledge you have and the faith you have, that you can actually pursue this thing and learn and learn and learn and keep following that path.
I love that. I love that. By the way, is this the email that you mentioned earlier where people can message you and get a copy of the assessment?
Yes, correct. Yeah. Again, if you want the personal core values assessment, I'm happy to send it over. Here's the email. I also have a sacrifice audit that basically looks at what you love and what you're best at versus what you love that you're not best at. And I'm happy to send that over as well.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to check it out myself. So share with us, how did you discover your purpose, being so courageous? And so how did you discover that? Was it through a crisis, or what's your wake-up call?
Yeah, for the record, I toggle back and forth on this question, meaning there are times, the book particularly puts a smile on my face because as an observationalist, yes, there was definitely moments of courage for me. Like, am I qualified to write a book? Can I write a book? Am I good enough to write a book and all the stuff that comes with it? But when I really think about the people that I studied in the book, they're really the heroes, the leaders, they're the courageous ones. Now I get to take what I've learned from them and nudge other people. Mm-hmm. But yet, if I look back to many decisions made in my life up to that moment, it was courageous for me to move to the West Coast with no job. It was courageous for me to be an entrepreneur and to try, even though I was scared or too stubborn to fail and go back to New York City. Mm-hmm. So even though I didn't recognize those moments at the time as courageous, going through this process and then reminiscing on my life to this moment, I do see doses of courage in the way I operate. I got to tell you, courage to me is not a sales tool. It's even like in your bones, or you can grow the muscle. And I think if you're going to do anything in life with our short time on this planet, why not go for it anyway? Hopefully a whole slew of people don't start quitting their jobs and start blaming me, by the way.
Yeah.
But go for it. Like, take action on that idea that you have. You have that idea for a reason. And if you keep thinking about that idea, this is just a data point that you should be following it.
Yeah. I think Stephanie just backs up everything you mentioned. I think she mentioned that you are 100% authentic, like amazing. And so thank you for sharing that, Stephanie. And so Ryan, I want to ask you, like earlier you mentioned how you define, right, courage, which is knowledge combined with faith and action. So maybe you can explain that definition to us. What do you mean by those three elements?
Yeah, I think in life and in business, you're never going to have every bit of knowledge you need to make a call. In fact, if you wait on the data, I think you're going to get passed. Now, there's a certain amount of data we need. And I think data to me is not knowledge. Data is a means to knowledge. And then how does that knowledge make you feel, which is the faith part. And then finally, you may know something and you may feel something, but what are you going to do about it? Where's the action? So the irony here is 2 of 3 in any direction is not courageous. Right? Knowledge and faith without action is paralysis.
Oh, wow.
Right? How long did you talk about moving on as a teacher? Like, you knew what you should do. You probably felt that you weren't happy. Did you jump right away, or did it take some time?
A few years. I was working on this as a side hustle. Oh my God, 5 years, but at the time I wasn't thinking about reinventing myself. I was trying to be a better teacher. And that was the goal, slowly becoming a practitioner, and then quite a few years. Yeah.
And you're not alone. I mean, I think a lot of us know in our heads what we should do. It's just that action part is so hard to do. By the way, faith and action without knowledge is reckless. It's careless. I think a lot of people think that's courageous. That's not courage. Courage always starts with knowledge. And then knowledge and action without faith. If you're numb on the inside, if you're just going through the motions, you're working on status quo. You're working on safe. So it has to be all three. It's got to be knowledge, faith, and action.
Yeah, also reminds me of what you shared earlier. You discovered all those people you interviewed, they have a clear sense of purpose and clarity. So, like they know what they want and they believe in themselves and they see that big vision. Yeah, really powerful. So how long did it take you to kind of redefine courage?
I'd say the definition itself took about 6 months. And then the next part of it was like, well, could I deconstruct it further? Like, which knowledge should I be following then? How do you build faith? If I'm at a company, how do I build faith internally or externally with customers? Like, can I make believers out of them? And then where do you take action? And so the next 18 months of the book were really coming up with a process. Just what we needed is another person with an acronym, but coming up with a process that could help you unlock courage inside yourself. I always say there's a price of becoming a courage brand. I think one of the bigger truths is that the way we're wired is a big part of the problem. We have this thing called our central nervous system. So our standard operating system is nervousness.
Yeah.
The experts say that 95% of us are freeze or flight, and only 5% of us are fight. So if I could train you, if I could reboot you and get you into that 5% of a fighter, could I actually develop what I call a central courage system to combat the realities of your central nervous system? And this is really what the book covers. Is what are the steps I need to do to build that central courage system so I could push forward.
Oh, wow, that's so powerful. Like, everyone should definitely get a copy of the book and learn more. As though Stephanie mentioned earlier, in the book, you mentioned quite a few powerful tips. And so here's a question actually from Stephanie. And she asked, how do you create believership?
Yeah, so for those of you who wonder where did that word come from, I'm a writer. So if a word's taken, I make up words. I'll be the first to admit that that's what you do as a writer, I guess. And so I just had a gripe with the word leadership, because I think some poor leaders turn leadership into cheerleadership. And they start rah-rahing to their staff. And maybe that works with 10% of your group, but your high producers see right through it. Your high producers, they want the truth, especially like a time like right now. Like we don't have time for the BS. We want the truth and as fast as possible. So I like the term believership. I think a good leader turns leadership into believership. And the sole goal of the believership is to make believers in all directions. Make believers out of your team, make believers out of your customers, make believers out of your board if you're a public company. And you even make believers or fake believers. And fake believers, they don't wear a t-shirt around the office that says fake believer, right? They just nod and smile and collect the paycheck. And then when you're not looking, they mess with your culture, right? They slow you down. They start talking negative word of mouth to everyone around here. So to me, again, the way you make a believer is by some very simple things. I think caring makes believers. Respecting makes believers. If you're a leader, as annoying as this sometimes is, repeating makes believers. Like we have to say the same thing over and over again. Jim Collins talks about the definition of a company that's not successful is inconsistency, persistent inconsistency. So we need to be consistent, and we have to have our whole leadership team basically playing off of the same playbook. And then finally, I think seeing is believing. So if we're sitting here talking about courage and we're not being courageous ourselves, that's going to mess with our culture and people are going to be confused.
Yeah. I mean, like I see that in the education space and even being a mom, the best way for me to really educate my children is whatever I ask them to do, I have to embody the change myself. So I really love that. Yeah. And it's so powerful. I love this turn leadership into believership, and also goes back to, when you trust someone, that feeling comes from your heart. I know you talk so much about the heart, how you feel, the purpose. So I think this should be our t-shirt. So this is so powerful. Thank you for sharing. And let's talk about your framework, price. So can you explain that? And I think we now know why it is important to become courageous. And so teach us the how. So explain the price framework that you have developed.
Yeah. So price is a 5-step acronym. And again, as you perfectly stated, we talk a lot about our why in society, not too much about the how. And so price is the how. Like if you just consider me a change mechanic, it's just looking at the mechanics of the way we operate and getting your mechanics back in alignment. And again, there's a price of becoming a courageous brand. Price stands for prioritize, rally, identify, commit, and execute. And that first step is prioritize through values. And the second step is rally believers. These are the organizational health steps. So if anybody actually emails me for the core values assessment, it starts with that. It's actually going back and looking at the values of the organization. Are your values real? Are you operationalizing those values? I always like to pose the question, how valuable are your values? If the organization has values that are just CYA values, or they're collecting dust in an employee manual, or they're wall art, and they haven't been operationalized, you're not rewarding your teams and your staff off those values. If they don't resonate with the next generation workforce, you've got the wrong values. So it's time to reassess them. I mean, we're going to be coming into this new world post-COVID. I don't know if it's actually post or with COVID. And look, I think now more than ever, if you have not thought about your values once as a leader during this time, you really do have the wrong values. This is the time to reassess and to think how you want to drive your organization forward. I always like to say core values are not eye rolls. They're how the exceptional roll. So when you're leading through those values, again, people know what's expected of them. And in some ways, it takes the emotion out of decision making.
Yeah.
So that's the first step, is just getting clear on who you are, why you're wired the way you're wired, whether it's at the company level, at the personal level, going all the way back to the basics and reassessing the values. And I'll say this, if you're at a big company and you're honoring the founders' values, and the founders are maybe a little bit older and they haven't been in the business for a long time, you think you're honoring them by keeping those values. If you really want to honor those values, the way you do it is by keeping the company relevant. Have the courage to reinvent the values to mirror your workforce or your desired workforce.
Yeah. First of all, I really can't wait to get a copy of this value assessment. And so do you think, like, it is so surprising to me, I even including myself, like how little I know about myself until I was in my late 30s, almost took me 40 years. So why do you think that is the case? And for some people who are kind of maybe having children or like who are still younger, so should we be doing this type of value assessment at a much younger age and do this on a regular basis? Like how regular is an ideal frequency so that we're always stay in touch with who we are and understand, have that level of clarity on ourselves?
I mean, think of this like a video game. Level 1 is survival, right? So the first parts of our life, we're just trying to get through it. Maybe we're scared. Maybe we want to fit in, right? And at what point can you put a timeout on that and get to level 2, which is to look at who you are and why you are the way you are. And then start working on yourself.
Yeah.
And again, once you know who you are, then start surrounding yourself with people that share your values, that light you up, that make you better. I know coming out of COVID on the business side, I only want to work with people that I like, that I trust, and who make me better. Those are different, but I have clarity and like that's kind of who I want to work with. So how do I design constructs to do just that? Which is the next level. It's like I'm looking at one of the questions here from Claudia Sandoval. Hi, Claudia.
Oh, I need that question. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she said, how do you overcome failure or setbacks? I think that's really hard to do alone. I think you have to acknowledge it by yourself if there's a failure or a setback, but then you got to turn to your people, your support system, and attack it together and admit, you know what? I don't have all the answers. Let's knock this around for a bit and see what we come up with. And usually through that collision of ideas comes an action plan that you can push forward and experiment off of. And whether you fail in that experiment or not, it's a learning opportunity that gets you to the next and to the next. Now, money is always going to be an issue. Like, do we have enough money for runway? No question. But to me, it's those little experiments that test and tinker. You called it a side hustle at first for you until it wasn't. That's just a little experiment. And I'm sure you failed along the way, but you kept going. And now here we are. Right. And I cannot wait to see what your platform looks in 2 years from now. I mean, because you're going to continue to iterate, and it's going to look different.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big part, right? Learning through real life experience, especially failures and mistakes. I so agree with you. Can you share with us? You just described this framework, price, and I think it's really powerful. And can you give us some examples? You have another company called Sock Problem. So I wonder if you can share with us how you have been applying this framework, how you have been modeling your own framework to build a courageous company, a courageous brand like Sock Problem. So explain to us what does a Sock Problem mean and what do you guys do?
Yeah, I think a lot of people write books and then they leave their ideas in the land of theory. And so I wanted to actually test price. So the way we tested price was we created this company called Sock Problems. So if you go to sockproblems.com, what you'll see is a whole bunch of socks that strive to solve problems in the world. So if you wanted to sock racism, if you wanted to sock inequality, if you wanted to sock gun violence. So sock is not just a noun, it's a verb. And we actually won't make a sock unless it socks a problem in the world. And if, again, for those of you who are familiar with give one, get one models, that's not really give one, get one. It costs them $1 to make. They charge you 60. So what we do is we give targeted cash back to different charity partners. Every sock has a charity partner associated with it. So if you wanted to sock cancer, the money goes back to Alex's Lemonade. If you wanted to sock prostate cancer, it goes back to Movember. And we give 25% of the purchase price, targeted cash back to these experts. I'm really not an expert in socking problems. Our partners are. And so we're sending money back to them. You're looking here at the sock extinction sock. So for those animal lovers, that's what you're looking at here. And, if anybody wants to buy a pair or two, they can use Courage as a code. I think it gets you 15% off at the site. Our tagline's care, wear, share. So if you care about a particular cause, hopefully you'll wear one of our pairs and then be part of our solution and share it forward in social and let the world know we exist. So again, all we did was follow the price method that's in the book to come up with this idea. For those listening overseas, we've got work to do. This is only in the US for now. Hey, there's our tagline, care, wear, share. But if you want to make a dent and you want to make a difference, you can do it. And again, like I said, I'm grateful for all of our partners because those are the real heroes that are solving problems in the world.
Wow, this is so amazing to hear. And what inspired you to, instead of saying like solve the problem, but sock? So what inspired you in the very first place to give birth to this brilliant idea?
So I'm going to share like a little quick story that I don't think I've ever shared.
Yeah.
Which is, I had this idea for 10 years and was doing nothing with it. And so imagine going through this process and writing a book, and you're sitting with all these leaders and you're trying to stay focused on the task at hand, which is extract out what I need from them and share their stories. And the little voice inside my head kept coming back to sock problems. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wait a minute, how can I write a book about courage and then not be courageous myself? Like what? Like, do I suppress this or do I follow it? And I was literally, it was probably my third lunch with Ryan, who's one of the founders of Method Soap, founder of Ollie and now Welly. He's amazing. And I'm like, hey, the first time I met with him, I was afraid, don't ask a stupid question, right? Because I had my own fears. But by the third time, I was I would call him a friend now. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, I have this idea. What do you think? And he was like, that's actually pretty good. Like, you need to go do that. And the pinnacle of compliments from any entrepreneur is actually pretty good. Like, that's like climbing the top of the mountain is in terms of compliments that you can get. And from that moment forward, when he's like, you should really follow that path, I went to town following price, finding the right partners to launch the business, and was really fortunate to find an amazing operator, an amazing what I call a sockologist, and putting together a team that really shared values, but brought breadth of experience to the table. Mm-hmm. And we're just a little engine that could. We're still a startup. We need funding, so if anybody's in that space, happy to have that conversation. Mm-hmm. But I like what we stand for, and I like our potential.
I love it. I can't wait to check it out myself. And, if you have any education related organization. And so here's a question from Dan. Thank you for joining us live. And he wants to know, how do you balance the line between courage, I guess, courage, faith, and speculation?
Yeah. I wonder, does he mean knowledge, faith, and action?
I think so.
Yeah. By the way, this is the COVID edition where you can probably hear my dog in the background.
Oh, so. Don't worry. My cat will join us in any second.
So great question. Again, I think you just have to give yourself permission to know you're never going to have every bit of knowledge you need to make a call. Mm-hmm. So when does faith kick in? Right. And maybe sometimes you've got that faith. And by the way, faith is this is not a religious thing. This is inner belief. This is intuition. This is, you've been doing this for 15 years. And from all of your experiences, that collection of experiences on the inside, it just feels right. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can't even put it into words. It's a feeling. So trust that feeling. Get out of your head and trust that particular feeling. Now, that trusting that feeling might mean you have to go back to knowledge and get more knowledge and start talking to people about it before you start to take action on it. One of the little terms that I'm not a fan of is the term be bold. I'm not a fan of be bold. I like act bold. I think it puts it into the action piece. So less be bold, more act bold. And like, yeah, without the action part, we're just
Love
stuck
it.
in the garage here with your idea. So experiment. Maybe they're little experiments at first, and with more validation, you get bigger and bigger with those ideas.
I love it. Using action verb. That's how when I communicate and chat with my own children. When they say I try to do something, I tell them in this house we don't use the word try. Either you do it or you don't. Like you don't try to do something. It's like being pregnant. Yes or no, not actually trying. So that's kind of how I use. So I love it. Talking about like so many of us, we have so many ideas, but we just feel like I love how you have, taking action, executing on our ideas. It's so important. Yeah.
I did want to share. I mean, again, because I know we're getting close on time here. So the way the book is written, the front half of Return on Courage is the why now. Like, why now of all things do I think we need courage?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a 3-page chapter in the middle called The Break Glass Before Emergency, because you kind of need to know how to do this before you need it. And the back half is the how. How do we do it? So price is actually broken out. Each letter in price gets a chapter in the back of the book. And then there's actual worksheets that you can run yourself through. So it's like after you've gone through the prioritize through values section, you can actually run yourself through the worksheets to help yourself get clear. The R is rally believers, by the way. Mm-hmm. So once you know who you are, it's about finding your people. That's the believership concept we talked about before. Those 2 steps are what I would call organizational health steps, right? You don't get to pass go to what I would call the courageous business steps if we don't get those 2 steps on lockdown. And once we're clear on who we are and we've got our team, we can start to attack what I call our fears, whether those are business fears or personal fears. To me, the exercises that are in the book are just a better way to SWOT anyone who's done strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Mm-hmm. To me, every time I've done that, my strength ends up on my opportunity list. My weakness is a threat as well. My weakness is an opportunity. So we actually look to audit opportunities through the lenses of fear. Mm-hmm. There's a famous proverb that fear and courage are brothers, that you can't get to the courageous choice without channeling it through fear. But most of us suppress fear versus address fear. So we're going to smoke out that fear, and we're actually going to address, is it a product fear?
Yeah.
Right. Is it a marketing fear? Is it a vertical fear, or is it a personal fear?
Yeah. Totally. I think in one of your talks, you actually coined the term fear of missing fear. Is that right?
Yeah. I think actually coming out of COVID too, we're going to see less FOMO, and that's good, because I think we should have more FOMF. Mm-hmm. And as you said, fear of missing fear. If you don't have a fear, go find a fear. Go find the biggest fear you can find. And I'm a Seinfeld fan, so I always just like to say I'm in the fear shrinkage business. Let's take the biggest fear and start to work on it and shrink it down and face it and replace it. There's another fear right behind it, and probably another one behind that. And again, usually when you go through those fears, good things come on the other side.
I love it. Face it and replace it. So what's your biggest fear right now that you are working on, Ryan?
I would say the biggest fear by far is finding a way to fund sock problems. Because I know the potential for what the business can be. If Stance and Bombas had a baby, that would be sock problems. I even have identified a couple new team members that I'd like to come on. They're all stars. I want to make the world a better place. So for me, funding for sock problems is by far the biggest fear that I'm facing, that I want to take down. I think on the courageous side, when you're a keynote speaker, and obviously all these live events have gone away. So the second fear is really replacing that revenue. Courageous gets hired. We're kind of a special forces unit. So anywhere where companies need to deal with change, we come in and help. So whether that mission is a conviction mission or a communication mission or an innovation mission, we're swooping in and we're custom building our teams for the challenges. So from a revenue standpoint, we're fine as a whole. I like the work we're doing. We've been able to work with the NFL and Johnson & Johnson this year and Caesars Entertainment.
Congratulations.
It's been cool that they see value in what we're providing. But the world is going to be very, very different coming out of this.
Absolutely.
And we're going to pivot like everybody else.
Absolutely. I wonder when you are working with those companies, where do they get stuck the most? You know, you mentioned Johnson & Johnson, quite a few brands. And so where do they get stuck? I'm curious.
I think a lot of where they get stuck is just in the decision-making side. Like, where should they make the investments? Think about all of the human nature stuff. I mean, just because you're a behemoth brand doesn't mean you don't have real people who have families working for those brands. Well, those people don't want to get fired. Nobody wants to be on the street right now.
Totally.
And they're afraid of the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
So again, I think it's just giving them enough, like I said, giving them enough knowledge that they can take a leap and do it in a calculated way. Again, taking the courage out of courage as much as we can. And look, all the statistics that we started with, the reason we start there is to be like, you need to do this, like, or else we will approach a grave danger moment.
Yeah.
So all I can do is show them the statistics and then hopefully help nudge them to their what's next.
Totally. I mean, just like I know in the education space, like I think 3 years ago, there is an education futurist at Harvard University. He predicted 50% of American colleges will go bankrupt in the next 10 years. I was like, he made that prediction like 3 years ago. Now with the coronavirus, some of my friends are already losing jobs. So it is everything I feel like is happening faster.
Yeah.
So now is the best time to be prepared.
Well, not only that, I mean, the whole point of this isn't just creating processes to move faster and to be more agile, but it's to nail a distinct point of view that makes you different, that separates you from your competition. If I'm an institution right now, I want to get clear fast on what's our special sauce, and let's scream it from the mountaintops. Let's own an arena and let the world know we exist for a certain reason, because then you're going to start qualifying in the right types of people. If I'm in a business right now, it's the same thing. This is, again, we're kind of back to purpose. I like to say it's not enough to know your why. Let's put a rally cry on that why. Let's give people a real reason to be galvanized, to have conviction for the services that you're offering. And if you don't have a purpose right now that's truthful, that's obviously purposeful, that's emotional, that's different, you're going to have a hard time thriving. I mean, I'd spend my time there right now is thinking through, have you nailed your rally cry? Do you know your rally cry and your why? That's going to galvanize people.
Yeah. I wonder if you can, I love this, fear shrinking business, fear shrinkage. I love that. And I wonder, talking about coronavirus and moving forward, any like specific, like concrete, like advice that you can give to fellow entrepreneurs, small business owners. So moving forward, what should we be doing and thinking about right now? And be courageous, but at the same time, taking calculated risks, as you mentioned earlier.
First of all, I would use this opportunity, and I wish there was a better word, to really listen to your team. And it's okay to admit you don't know all the answers. And I would say before COVID, I was on record saying, less think, more do. Get out there, iterate off of the doing, right? Now I'd say, and this is more, to be honest, even 6 weeks ago, less do, more think. The world, like right now, I think the world is going to give us all permission to look different coming out of this. So what do you want to be known for? Again, this is why purpose matters. If I have a choice between working with a company with a true galvanizing mission and a genuine purpose to make our world better, and a company that's just in it to make money, where my alliances are, where my allegiance is. And I can't imagine that I'm alone. And the next generation, by the way, that's all they want is to make a better world and be part of that process. So this is the time to really think through, not just about making money, but making meaning and figuring out your role in tomorrow's society.
I love it. It ties so well to what you mentioned at the beginning of today's interview, that sense of purpose, figure out where is your place on planet Earth. So here's this is probably the last question we'll take. So forward, thank you for joining us live. So how to get on your fear when you have limited resources, like time, money, customers? I think that is a common question that we all face. Yeah.
Well, what I would do first is make sure you have the right fear to take down, which means I'd run the exercise. And I would ask yourself, which fear can you realistically start with? So it's easy for me to sit here and say, let's pick a fight with the biggest fear. But contextually, I would look at your vertical fear. What could take your whole industry down? I would look at your product fear. Where could your product be better? I would look at your perception fear from a marketing standpoint. Hey, the world thinks we're this. We think we're that. I would look at your personal fears. What are you afraid of? And once you have clarity of those fears, then you can start to design which one to take down first and almost prioritize off of like resources, time, money, what's realistic for you, but never lose sight in the biggest fear you want to take down. So there's little steps you can take, to work towards that biggest fear you have. The worst idea is to take on no fears, right? So I always say, like, are you a coward brand or a courage brand?
Exactly.
What's the difference? A coward brand knows what they do, knows what they should do, feels like they should do it, and never takes action on it.
I love this. I think the worst feeling is no feeling, numb. Like even if you are frustrated, at least you are frustrated about something. You are still kind of alive. Like those people, I think that's a major reason I resigned was I felt so numb inside. Every single day I was perpetuating myself. So I love what you just mentioned, Ryan. Yeah. So share with us, where can we get a copy of your book? I'm about to share the screen. So here.
Yeah, you've got it. Yeah. So there's two places you could buy the book. You could buy it on Amazon. As you can see, hey, we've got 73 reviews.
5 star, my friend.
Yeah, it was, I got to tell you, knowing that the book was going to be around a lot longer than me made me focus on writing a good book, not just a book. Or if you wanted to learn more, you can go to returnoncourage.com. You can buy the Audible there as well. And if you wanted to learn more about me, you can go to evencouragebrands.com. This is our special forces consultancy, or ryanberman.com for more on like my keynote side. So that's a lot, I know. But lots of places to find me. You can just LinkedIn with me. Courageous. I think we put the LinkedIn.
Yeah, I shared the LinkedIn earlier. This website is really interesting. Like, it threw me off a little bit. I was like, what is this? So I actually went through the exercise myself. Very, very interesting. Yeah, I love this courageous idea to redefine what a website should look like. Very interesting.
Well, you can't just tell courage. You got to show it, right? So this is our way of very quickly, seeing if people are really ready for us.
Yeah, I feel like that's many things in life. You just cannot say that, hey, I'm good. That's what I tell the students. We are in today's show me economy. Like, show me you are good. Show me you are courageous. And you have definitely shown us that you are a courageous leader. So thank you so much. Let me share with everyone again. And Ryan's LinkedIn, I think I had a typo there. Like missed something, but like his LinkedIn handle is correct. I did a copy paste. So feel free, everyone, connect with Ryan on LinkedIn and share with us your email again so that we can get a copy of the questions to understand who we are, our core values. So share. Yeah,
it's Ryan Berman at couragebrands.com. And really, it's no problem. I'm happy to help whoever wants it. Happy to send it over. And if that's the way I help society is helping people figure out who they are, I am so down with that. That sounds good to me.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining us live, everyone. Stephanie, Mike, Phil, Lance, and Peter, everyone in the live audience, Ella, and I'm sure I missed quite a few, and Pam. Thank you so much, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. And I hope to see you guys again next Wednesday, same time, same location. Stay safe and be courageous.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.